evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order our Thursday, October 21st SEAC meeting by acknowledging that the Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississauga of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. The Durham District School Board is committed to learning environments that are safe, welcoming, respectful, equitable, accessible, inclusive, and free from discrimination while placing human rights and equity at the center. We will begin by doing a roll call. We'll start off with the regrets. We have regrets from Hannah Nguyen. Her alternate, Christina Salisbury, is supposed to be attending tonight. And we also have regrets from Rowan Jarvis from the Learning Disabilities Association. So we'll just go through the list. Autism Ontario.
Spencer Renaud.
Okay. Durham Down Syndrome Association.
Tara Kelly.
Ontario Association for Families of Children with Communication Disorders.
Elizabeth Daniel.
Okay. Voice of for Deaf and Hard of Hearing. Okay, I don't see Kathy. Association for Bright Children is myself, Eva Kyriakides, and SEAC Chair. Member at Large?
Carolyn McLennan.
No. Okay. Easter Seals Ontario?
Christina Salisbury.
Okay. Trustees?
Donna Edwards, trustee for Ajax.
Okay.
Arlene Forts, one of the trustees for Oshawa.
Okay. And staff?
Andrea McCauley, Superintendent of Inclusive Student Services.
Kyla McKee, System Lead for Inclusive Student Services.
Okay. Our elementary school reps?
Shannon Robertson, the principal at Wesley Heights.
Okay.
And Tammy Rayner, principal at Sherwood.
Okay. And our secondary school rep?
Anthony Phelan, vice principal at Henry Street.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Can we have a motion then to approve the agenda? First, Elizabeth, seconded by Tara. All in favor? Okay. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from the September 16th, 2021 meeting? And if we have, is there any questions or concerns with respect to those minutes? No? Okay, can we get a motion to pass the minutes? Donna? Seconders? Darlene? All in favor? Okay, the minutes are passed. I would like to introduce David Wright, the Associate Director of Corporate Services, who's joined us tonight.
Thanks so much, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. Really happy to be here. My name's Dave. Pretty new with the board. I just have recently passed the date of my 1-year anniversary, so I guess I'm not truly a rookie, but pretty close. It's been quite a ride so far. The year's gone by super quickly. This year is shaping up to do the same, so really happy to be here and fit into everybody's busy schedules. I'm enjoying getting to know the Durham region a little bit, getting to know our students and stakeholders, and so I was very pleased to be extended the invitation this evening to meet some new people, and as well as have an opportunity to introduce myself. Thanks, Darlene. That's very kind. I had a wonderful afternoon at Non-Quan Outdoor Education Center with some colleagues, and when Andrea told me I could come casually this evening, I was very pleased. So I'm still wearing the same shirt. I can still smell the campfire. It's kind of making my night. So I'm a chartered accountant. I've worked in a few different sectors, but for the last 15 or so, I've worked in education. I spent the last 8 years prior to DDSB with Lakehead District School Board in Thunder Bay in a similar role. I was a superintendent of business there. As our chair mentioned, I'm the Associate Director of Corporate Services with the board. I think Jim and Nora have both attended, so I live on the other side of the hallway. I'm on the corporate side. There's a significant amount of overlap, though, with many academic portfolios, and I have the pleasure of working alongside Andrea on a very regular basis. I'm a strong believer in equity of access to education. One of the reasons why I enjoy working so much with Andrea is because of her clear passion for inclusive student services and her always bringing that lens to conversations. My first run through the budget process last year made it very clear that DDSB in general truly embraces the notion of equity of access to education, particularly when it comes to our students with the exceptionalities. So feel very good about all of that. I don't really have much other than an introduction this evening. Really happy to take any questions if you have any, but perhaps as your meetings go on, I'm also really happy to come again. So if there are things that arise that you'd like to chat about, invite me and I'll really be happy to attend. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions for Dave? No? Well, thank you so much for joining us. And oh, sorry, Darlene, go ahead.
I'm just going to ask a question because I know during the budget process last year, which I know was you were really new, but I know that you had made reference to wanting to have community input into the budget. And we always have SEAC do a budget deputation. I was just wondering if there's any other ways that you might be engaging our community members in terms of input for priorities on this next year's budget.
Thanks, Darlene. Great question. I had an interesting conversation with one of our affinity network chairs or presidents. I'm not sure what their title is. But when I was discussing with her the opportunity to provide input into the budget process, it seemed like a bit of a foreign concept. So we did send out emails to all of our stakeholders. SEAC, I think, was probably familiar with the invitation because has historically provided input into the budget process. I think I might just pick up the phone and call some folks this year and ask if they would like to participate as well. Certainly, we appreciate SEAC's perspective when we're finalizing our budget, but I think there's certainly an opportunity there to engage some broader stakeholders. So really happy to have community feedback, but through our own internal networks, I think is probably where we can get some really quality feedback. And so I think we'll just try a little harder to tap those networks and hopefully engage some individuals through that. So funny you bring that up because the conversation was a really good one. It was with an administrator who's the Affinity Network chair, who was going through her superintendent qualification process. And so one of the modules in that process is to sit down with a business superintendent and talk about the budget process. And so a really good opportunity to engage in that conversation. And so I think we'll have at least one more active participant, but hopefully we'll be able to engage some more folks.
Thank you.
And are there any other questions for Dave? Well, thank you, Dave. We appreciate it. And if we don't work with you before that, we'll hopefully be working with you or through you for the next budget.
Look forward to that. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Really
Thank
nice
you
to
so
see you.
Have a good night. Okay, we're moving on then to number 8, staff reports, starting with the administration report with Andrew McCauley.
Thank you so much. So PAC on SEAC for October recommends overview of EQAO results and accommodations. So due to school closures, EQAO assessments were canceled for the 2021 school year. And this fall, we do have grade 9 math as well as the OSSLT being administered. So that's occurring in both, and then further testing dates are scheduled later in the year, inclusive of both secondary and the elementary assessments. So that'll put us back in the loop for bringing you results this time next year. The Durham District School Board 21-22 operational plan will be going forward in November for conversation and discussion with our trustees in that purview. And so SEAC will be provided a link to the public document and an overview of the plan with our commitments and shared focus on students with special education strengths and needs, and how that's embedded within will be part of our updates next month. And we'll bring that forward between the trustees and administration so that you get a fulsome picture on that. Just giving a quick partnership update. So in partnership with the Ministry of Education, the Geneva Center provides districts annually with an amount of course credit to utilize to support access to training programs with a focus on supporting students with autism. This year, the Durham District School amount is just over $69,000 in tuition credit. So we're just about to survey out to schools, and then we'll be allocating that. It's for online learning that is self-directed in terms of timing and access in a few different courses related to ABA-based principles for students. So we know that's good for the students that need it and good practice in classrooms as well. In terms of individual education plans, tonight our SEAC meeting falls on the 30th day of the regular school year. And as SEAC members, you know that is a date of significance in terms of individual education plans and the required timelines for both consultation and development. So we'd like to thank our students who have provided input, parents and caregivers for thoughtful input where there's been good collaboration spaces. We're always continuing to grow that. And to staff across the district for the thoughtful design of individual education plans as we continue to grow in our practice to center student identity along with their learning strengths and needs for both well-being and learning. We did have a little bit of a software glitch yesterday with our IEP software going down for quite a while, and we know that that put a bit of additional stress on our school staff, so we really appreciate their thoughtfulness in working through that, as well as partners such as Kyla, working with our innovation and tech teams to get that back up and running on such a critical timeline for families looking forward to those coming home today. And then just in terms of mental health services update as well, as we serve our students both in terms of learning and well-being. So we made a couple changes and these were shared on Monday night in response to a public question that came in through board, and I thought really important to share in this space as well. So just a couple changes that we had made in terms of our mental health services to increase access. So prior to COVID, all of our consents required written consent and forms, and the supports were provided through in-person connections. So last year, responsive to COVID, the teams implemented a format for verbal consent, as well as launched online services, and these will both be maintained as we move through the pandemic and post-pandemic, because we know they're part of best serving for students and families. And at that time, we added the button on the website that people could click and drive to mental health support, and that line is monitored during business hours. It's a non-emergency line that's monitored by our staff. We continue to grow into this year. And so this year we increased our allocation of mental health staff to some priority secondary schools. And our teams in psych and social work are currently piloting group services. And Kyla's going to highlight one of those today that build peer communities and also enable us to have a greater service reach. So we're looking forward to the data from those original pilots, which really centers on student experience and their feedback and how we grow those further. Our teams are evolving in their data processes because we always want to look at what was the impact of the services provided. And so in general, historically, we've always looked at number of referrals opened across all the services in inclusive student services. And we're really trying to move our practices to what was the impact of the interaction. So how did we help support a student or a family? We do know at this time the needs are great and are at an elevated level. Currently trending within our mental health needs for our students are students at risk of self-injury, the predominance of anxiety, stress, and mood disorder as adolescents are missing access to the activities that bolster them and connect them. And so we're really glad to start seeing some of those activities, both in community and schools, coming back in because we know those are resiliency factors for our kids that help. But to be responsive to those trends within the service referrals, All of the teams are focusing healthy coping and anchoring in that within all of our supports to our students, both at the classroom level through the well-being workers, and then inclusive through to our individual supports through psych and social work for individual students. So that's a bit of a round robin of an update for you this evening, and that is our administrative report for this month. Happy to take any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Andrea with respect to her report, the admin report?
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions if nobody else has. One is for the OSSLTs. There's a couple of years of students that missed those. Will they, especially the ones that are in grade 12 this year, will they be going back and incorporating them in the testing this year, or they're just letting that go?
So we do have one of our secondary administrators. I don't know, Anthony, if I may put you on the spot for that to be able to speak to it directly, because we do have the options of both the OSSLT as well as the OLC course. But I think this is one, if you don't mind, Anthony, just describing it from a school level. You're closer to the kids than we are.
No problem. Yeah. So in our board, the week of November 22nd to 26th, our grade 11s are going to be writing the test. And in the spring, in May, I don't have the exact dates, our grade 10s will write the test. But graduating grade 12s do not write the test this year. That requirement is waived by the ministry.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, or was there another part?
Yeah, no, that's good to know. I was just curious as to how they were managing sort of that backlog of students.
The OLC portion of it will come into play in second semester, most likely for those grade 11s who are unsuccessful. But that's kind of a to be determined at this point.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you. The second question I had is with respect to the group pilot projects. Do you have a sort of a timeline where you're expecting sort of some data to come back on that?
Absolutely. So there's 2 different groups running, and we put a bit of the information into the department update. So you saw the Paths to Wellness as well as the Be Me, Black Excellence Made Evident. And so both groups are about 8 weeks in length. The groups we're launching this month. So we're looking forward to having feedback from the kids in the new year.
Okay, great. And will you guys bring that back to SEAC as to how that went?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be bringing trends back. We just want to be careful because of the groups running fairly small to begin with to make sure that we get student feedback and voice in the design of the programs. We just can't share feedback that would identify any of the participants. So it would be more global comments. But we could actually have members of the 2 design teams who are facilitating those programs come share as well.
That would be great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions before we move on? Okay, then we'll move on to the board reports with Donna.
We actually had fairly light agenda, although we did have a discussion on there was no motion on the table. We had a discussion around the vaccine policy, and direction. And it, at this time, we are following what is required by the Ministry of Education, and they do tell us that we look towards our regional medical health officer as far as that's concerned, because I know that many trustees have received emails from a variety of people both ways about mandating vaccines, etc. And some boards have mandated vaccines. But the thing is that in most of those cases, their medical officer has either agreed or will back up the decision to do so. And so we have our medical officer, it hasn't made any step towards strengthening any of the, or the need to strengthen things. So we're following Ministry of Education policy, and that's right now, that's where things stay. Then the other thing I would say is that we did have a presentation on a bell time review because it's another hot topic, especially when it comes to the secondary school system, students starting at 10 o'clock, and there's some concerns from parents around after school activities, jobs, etc. But there's also the continued shortage, not only in Durham, but across the province as far as bus operators and bus drivers. So we will be, DSTS will be doing a bell time review. And they're going to ensure that looking at ride times and reducing basically the travel time as much as they can, and managing the capacity on the buses, and trying to optimize the tiering. If you understand that buses, a bus driver can drive several routes. They tier them. Ajax, I'll tell you, is one of the highest tiered levels in Durham School Board. I can tell you that. But they basically they're trying to tier between 8 and 9:30 a.m. to eliminate the need for a 10 a.m. start. So they're looking at that. The bell time review is expected to be completed and presented to us in January of the new year. So that was basically the real items. And then I just wanted to point out that this is Local Government Week, which most people don't seem to recognize that trustees are part of the local government. They just think of municipal councillors and mayors, but it is Local Government Week. And the Ontario Public School Board Association has had sort of a campaign always for awareness around what trustees do, and what the Ontario Public School Board Association of Trustees basically a lot of the things that they advocate for. So if you go to the OPSPA website, you will see several videos of from the various regional chairs talking about the initiatives and some of the things that trustees work on and what they're responsible for. It's sort of a good use for the grade 5 curriculum and the civics curriculum, as far as, because it's interesting. I just participated in a spec ed qualification course. I had 2 classes, and I asked those teachers. There was a total of it between the 2 classes, 60, I'm trying to think, there was 35, 66 participants, and I asked how many voted for their trustee, and 3 people raised their hand. So, and that's it. And then if I compared Durham Region's budget compared to ours, and I kind of comparison as far as the tax base, Durham Region has a budget of about $1.8 billion. We almost have a $1 billion budget. They have a workforce of approximately 60,000 workers. We have over 70,000 workers. So it just goes to show you that when people are voting, they do vote for mayors and so forth, but a lot of people don't know what trustees do. And yet we are very much responsible for sometimes even a larger budget than the local municipality. So it is Local Government Week, and you can access those resources there. That's my spiel. Because elections next year, not that I'm necessarily running, I'm just saying it's really important for us to understand what trustees do.
Thank you, Donna. Appreciate that. Questions, Darlene? Go ahead.
Just a point of clarification, Donna. You had said 70,000 workers, but I think we have about 12,000 workers and over 70,000 students. Is that correct? Or
Sorry.
Sorry.
Over 70,000 students, right? Sorry. Yeah. But it's just the capacity of what we're saying. Correct. Sorry.
No worries. I just wanted to make sure it was clear. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Donna with respect to the board report? No? Okay. Then we can move on to the Inclusive Student Services Department report with Kyla.
Evening, everyone. You have a copy of the PowerPoint, so I'm just going to highlight a few things and maybe add a few more details for clarification. So just going to draw your attention to start to the slide around COVID-related updates, and just wanted to clarify a few things. The first one around community experience and excursions. As we know, our health and safety of staff and students is absolutely an utmost priority for everyone, and so one of those considerations has been for field trips, which we have placed a pause on, continued for this school year at this time. We're going to continue, obviously, to revisit it on a regular basis, but just wanted to highlight for SEAC that there are two important considerations that have been noted for the board. One is, and both are related to supporting our students with special education strengths and needs, and that we've kind of put in an evaluation process for these two areas where the trip may be necessary for the completion of credit-bearing courses in secondary schools, and if the excursion is required to support essential skills development for students with special education strengths and needs who are accessing learning through placement and specialized programs. So our practical learning program in particular has a number of different activities as part of their normal programming for the outcomes. And so an example of that would be transit training. For an example, we know that some of our students, particularly those in their senior high school or secondary experience, learning to independently function with or use the transportation locally is an important part of providing them some independence and living in the community as they may move on to pathways. So certainly that is a consideration that's being made. And work experience in general for our students is also something that's being supported and worked through. And our sites such as portable packaging is reopening, and we'll have lots of opportunities to be able to have students moving through that work experience. And just wanted to highlight for SEAC again that our new transition coordinator team, another layer of how they're supporting is that part of this evaluation process is that if a program teacher is looking to provide that sort of essential skill opportunity, they're reaching out to the transition coordinator team to be able to discuss what it is as far as that essential skill or goal. And if it's something where we can't necessarily move to a community experience, the transition coordinator team is looking to work with the school-based team to design in-house activities that kind of scaffold and build those skills, particularly independent living ones. So an example was, we know grocery stores were in the past a part of an experience where our classes may go out to learn how to independently plan a menu, shop for groceries, learn to make change, all those kinds of things. In the COVID protocols, that's a little more concerning. So things like creating an in-house grocery store where they can have the same similar experience, but do it in a safe way is an example of a recommendation that the transition coordinator team may offer. So they're going to continue to partner with schools, and schools have just been asked to reach out to them and then work through in partnership with myself to just see where else we can provide those opportunities while also recognizing and understanding we are still not back to normal practice. We are still navigating a complicated pandemic. So wanting to support health and safety of kids as much as we possibly can. Another area to highlight for the group is the SIP guidelines. We know that last year, and I believe SEAC supported us in our advocacy to hold or put a pause on SIP applications, recognizing the complexity of that. The ministry has at this time asked us to participate in the normal full process. So we are planning for and moving forward with the SIP application process. So we will keep you posted as we work through that, and it's being supported as always with the ISS teams, and particularly the psych services team members and the facilitators in terms of coordinating those applications. Also want to draw your attention to the SEA guidelines. I know you have a copy of them. They do get slightly revised every year. One of the most significant changes that's occurred between the last couple of years and now is that OSAPAC licenses no longer exist. We're a bit ahead of the curve on that in terms of our team being aware and really exploring what other ways we can license and provide support. So Google Read and Write would be a prime example of how, as a board, we embraced that particular software, and all students in the Durham board have access, and then we support our students in terms of that funding for students with special education strengths and needs in particular. We partner with our other departments. So just looking at where those licensing or software pieces may have been helpful, how we can add in our own licensing, our own supports, and we continue to look for new options that are available that would meet that need. So we will continue to revisit. Our inclusive technology team works very closely with both curriculum, student achievement, and innovative education in selecting licenses. And we're using them in a number of ways, including gap closing and intervention as an important piece of that. One thing I did want to highlight for the group, and we'll come back to once we have a fulsome plan in place, is actually a full review of how we manage and navigate the complex SEA process. Many years ago, we did not have the capacity to be able to leverage and partner with other departments like the IT and innovation departments as part of the SEA approval process. I know in my 5 years in this role, we've really made some strong connections between those departments, working with assets teams, IT teams, and innovation and purchasing all tied into one. So we've actually launched a full review of SEA in the technology area to see how we can leverage, especially a board who's innovative in the one-to-one Chromebook program. Not all boards, as you know, have that available to their students in grade 7 and up. And technology has been a big part of the Durham board, especially for the last several years. So we've begun a process to really evaluate how we can work across all departments and work through things like purchasing and technology support or tech support to improve those efficiencies and really partner with the SEA team, but maybe also have other departments who are already doing that work for our one-to-one side or our innovation side, being able to bring that support into our department so that it's much more efficient, but also leverages the skills and knowledge base of the people who are doing that work. I, for one, don't have a clue about specifications for, different devices. So when they're asking for recommendations, I'm doing a shoulder check with somebody else. So to know that that person could do that legwork at the front end is something we're looking to redesign. And so we're calling the process reimagining the SEA tech support, and we're working through that. So we'll come back to you with a follow-up around that. And then the last piece was just in reference to the groups that Andrea was talking about. The BME, Black Excellence Made Evident, is one of those two support groups. And so we have their public service announcement here to play for you. So if you bear with me for a second, I will hope that my rehearsal in advance of tonight's meeting is going to work. But I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic and share my screen for a very short video.
Students of Durham District School Board, we see you.
Resilient,
Courageous, proud,
capable,
determined, empowered,
Black,
and excellent. We know that you are all these things and more.
We hear you.
We hear you.
We hear you.
DDSB's social work and psychological services staff understand the unique strengths of Black youth and the challenges that anti-Black racism presents.
We have created BME, an 8-week online group to support the well-being of our Black high school students.
We support you.
We support you.
Please contact your school social work, psychology, or guidance staff for more information. You can also email us at bme@ddsb.ca.
There could be no BME
without you. Join us.
And with that, I'm here to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. I see Darlene has her hand up for a question.
Thank you. And that was a really, I liked that video quite a lot. So it sounds like a really exciting program. I just wanted to clarify, because I know trustees had the benefit of the discussion around the centralized software licenses that used to be purchased through Ontario. I'm not sure, and forgive me if I'm just not sure everyone may have realized the change. And I know it's outlined a little bit in the presentation, but I didn't know if anyone wanted just a little more explanation on that. And I know in the past, my second piece is I know in the past.
Recording in progress.
I know that in the past, SEAC has advocated for an increase in SIP funding. And we know that it doesn't really address the full cost that the Durham District School Board puts forward to support students who have SIP claims. So I was just wondering if we're hearing any possibility of an increase in SIP funding coming ever.
So far, I would say the ministry has been silent on that particular topic.
Thank you. And I don't know if Andrea, sorry, Chair, who might know more about the licensing, just a brief kind of.
That'd be me as well. I can give you a brief overview. Yeah, no worries. So what has happened in the past years back was that OSAPAC had a particular group of licenses that they would provide the license to school boards across the province with. And they've been slowly pulling that back and reducing the number. And now there are no licensed software pieces. And so school boards have had to make adjustments to explore what licensing would be beneficial to all students, but specifically keeping in mind the students with special education strengths and needs. There is language to be able to provide specific software licensing where appropriate, and looking at those, again, clinical recommendations or other ways to be able to provide those supports. So again, part of that reimagining is also exploring who we can leverage their experience and passion about that particular category so we can explore. And we're also looking at licensing in general, because tracking licenses is also a significant challenge. And so again, those partnerships working with our student achievement department is also going to help us. We're hoping to leverage some software, to be quite honest, that will make that a little bit easier. But we've had a few changes through different departments that that partnership with other departments is going to allow us to be able to piggyback on some processes that are happening for other reasons, which will make it easier. But one of the other areas I would really kind of focus in on as part of this discussion is our whole shift towards universal design. One of the things we're really working hard to do is to partner with other departments like student achievement or innovative education, so that when they're thinking about license purchases, they're exploring beyond just a very unique need. So an example of a unique need would be our Choose It Maker license that we use to support our nonverbal students and have a very hands-on way for them to engage in some activities, which is excellent. But then we have a large number of students who may be sitting in different grades, and their literacy and numeracy skills need to be differentiated for. So when partners and system leads like Linda Ford DeCuna, who's a partner of mine, or Tim Ralph in terms of innovative education as well, we're getting together to talk about those things, so that when they are looking for other licenses to be able to purchase, they're looking for software pieces that meet a greater base of students, so that we can differentiate and leverage licenses. So a great example of this is actually this year at DDSB at Home Elementary. We have licenses that are maybe more suited to a particular grade or age of students that campus might be purchasing, but all principals of all campuses have been told that if there is a license that's happening in one of the other campuses, and they have students in their campus that they're differentiating for that may be reading above or below that grade level, to be connecting with the other principal and piggybacking on those licenses. So they're really working together to be able to support. And then we're also looking for licenses that go across so many different skills and so many different grade levels, that one license or one piece of software where we could buy a board license all of a sudden provides programming that meets a much larger group of students. And so that's a very big shift from where we would have been many years ago, or even a few years back, so that when they're thinking about what they're looking to purchase with funding that's in their department, they're having a greater consideration for the neurodiverse population that we serve, the students in a variety of different grades that may have different learning needs. And then we're piggybacking on that with our small classes as well, helping our small class teachers better understand what licenses are available on, in campuses through the mainstream, and how appropriate those would be to be able to provide independent learning activities for students who are sitting within other classes and other programs, and their needs may be different than their like grade peers. So lots of collaboration happening, lots of shifts in thinking, and a much broader scope in terms of that. So when I said we're ahead of it a little bit, that's what I meant. We've kind of thought about this to respond through a universal design lens, rather than finding, one or two or, a small number of licenses for a particular piece of software. Well, will that serve a greater purpose? Yes. Okay, then let's partner with another department and support more students, because there's lots of other students out there that are still in risk, or we're still, supporting and understanding them in different ways. And we know technology can often leverage the playing field a lot. Sorry, that was not a very short answer, Darlene.
That was a wonderful answer, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Kyla for tonight? No? Okay. Thank you so much, Kyla. Appreciate that. We're going to move on to the SEAC membership related items. We have actually quite a bit on the go right now. You would have received an email from Lisa the other day with respect to the response from the Black Parent Support Group, sort of clarifying a couple of the questions that we had. They've confirmed that they are not a group of professional educators, that their connection to the association is that they're a parent arm of this association. So they're made up of a group of parents as opposed to the educators for that group. They don't operate in a chapter format, but looking at the regulation actually says that they're required to operate across Ontario, but doesn't say anything about a specific chapter. So from my perspective, I think the argument can be made that they meet the regulation requirements to sit on SEAC. I don't know if anybody else has any questions or comments with respect to that. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Yeah, when you mentioned being required to operate across Ontario, I noticed in their response that they said that they cover the GTA, including the Durham region. Now, I don't suppose that they would turn away anybody who was from outside of the GTA who approached, but it did, occur to me that there's a significant percentage of Ontario that is not GTA. So just want to make sure they would offer support there as well.
Yeah, my understanding is that from the email is that they go to where the need is. So if somebody was to reach out to them from sort of wherever they are in the province, they go to where that need is. Andrea, go ahead.
Thank you. My understanding is that the group is fairly new, growing out of York Region and then centered in the GTA, but with the intention of growth, responsive. And I think when we look at who has had voice and who hasn't in terms of being in different structures like SEAC to advocate, that this is our grassroots organization that is family to family and growing in where the intersectionality for our kids really impacts in terms of their educational experience. And so for that reason, kind of the focus in the GTA to start, but in all of the literature, it's with that intent to grow as a support within the community.
Yeah, and I would argue that I would assume that many of our associations, while they're more than happy to have representatives in areas across the province, do not have representatives in every school board across the province. So I think that I think I think the intent is that it doesn't operate in just one area, that it operates through, sort of throughout, or like in, sort of in different areas of the province, not just one location. I don't know if we want to open, have more discussion on that, but given the voice that they would bring to the table, and I feel like I personally feel like they've satisfied the requirements of the regulation enough for us to justify offering them a seat at the table. I don't know if we want to, put forward a motion and vote on it, and go from there. What are sort of thoughts on that? Should we go ahead and do that and then just vote?
Yeah. I mean, basically, you need a motion on the floor that make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees that the Black Parent Support Group become a member of OPSA and name the two people from that were mentioned in the letter. I don't have that letter in front of me.
I was going to say I don't have that letter handy. Andrew, do you happen to have that letter handy? Or I can look it up.
I'm just looking to get it because they had named a member and alternate. Give me one second.
Yes, they did.
You were muted, Andrea.
Oh, my apologies. The representative would be Jenny McLaughlin, and the alternate would be Carissa Foston Lewis. I'll put it in the chat box.
Okay, so does anybody want to go ahead and make a motion? Make that motion. Tara, seconded by Sensor and Ebb. Okay, so motion to ask the Board of Trustees to authorize the inclusion of the Black Parent Support Group as members of the SEAC. The representatives being Jenny McLaughlin and the alternate of Carissa Foston Lewis. All in favor?
Eva, that is for a voting position, correct?
It's for a voting position, yes, for a voting position on SEAC. All in favor? All right, favor. Okay, motion passed. Okay, the next item with respect to membership is our member at large. And as you could see from the email, we had 9 applications put forward. Two of the applications were connected to the Durham Early Years Consortium. So we may want to consider offering the Durham Early Years Consortium a non-voting position on SEAC. We do have space for that because there is something to be said for having a voice in sort of working towards having a nice flow between sort of our kids at daycare, moving into school in the morning, and from school back into daycare. So that voice on SEAC could be a valuable voice as a non-voting member. So that's something we can consider is requesting that be offered to the consortium. The other 2 candidates we looked at had some fantastic. So we ended up narrowing it down to 2 candidates. We had several very good people put their names forward. So we broke it down in a sense. We were looking at what voices do we have on SEAC currently, and what type of voice is missing. It would be beneficial to bring to the table on SEAC, and also looking at the ability of that member at large to help families, help direct families who may reach out to them, because who may not see their situation as fitting to one of the other associations that are currently sitting on SEAC. So they often will reach out to a member at large. So we sort of looked at that when we were making our determination as to which candidates to put forward. So candidate A currently has a professional role as a director of Access Support Center for Durham College. Previous experience includes UIOT teacher education program, including consultation with the Ministry of Education of Bermuda to increase access for students with a variety of exceptionalities, and previous experience as a special education classroom teacher, actually here at the DDSB. Candidate B, his current professional roles through Participation House as a service manager for community supports and respite with a focus on transitions to support further independence. Trained as a developmental service worker. Other community involvement, is a current member of the Durham Region Accessibility Advisory Committee and the Transit Advisory Committee. So both super strong candidates. So that's where we narrowed it down to the 2. Just to make it simple for voting purposes. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions or comments they want to make on the 2 candidates? No? Okay. Go ahead, Donna.
First, I was going to make a comment. I think that the first question you had was around the early years. I think that's a really good idea because we've kind of lost that connection with some of our community agencies. So the early years offering that non-voting membership would be really, really a good idea. So there's that, and as far as the 2 candidates, I'm not going to help to be transparent. It's not a conflict of interest to be transparent. I know one of the candidates, so I don't want to sway one way or the other.
You can abstain, Donna, from voting then.
Yeah, I know, but I want to be transparent to let you know that I know one of them.
Fair point. So, Eva, I guess I can add. So part of the conversation, the conversation around the 2. But I think where we landed was both of them provided really, A and B provided really good input in, and to the point, sort of, we wanted to get feedback from SEAC as to where we thought that lens and the voice could be in, which is sort of we brought back the 2 candidates that we thought would best fit in and provide some additional views and lenses and experience across into our committee. So we thought that was helpful. But there were some really good ones as well that unfortunately we already had voice of similar, a lens of similar natures already at the table. So but yeah, we'd be great if we could pull a whole bunch of them. But so. That's where we landed anyway. So just more context.
Yeah. And essentially it comes down to candidate A brings the Durham, sort of college perspective. So you're looking at post-secondary, which is, a voice that is very similar to what Craig brought to the table, but from the college perspective, which we haven't had. And many of our special education students has that perspective from the sort of a community lens, and the transition piece from into life outside of the secondary field, and maybe not necessarily into a post-secondary. So if there's no questions, I think maybe we should just do a vote, sort of candidate A and then candidate B, and then make our decision that way. Okay. Can I see a show of hands for candidate A? So hold your hand up so I can count it for sure. 2, 3. Okay. And for candidate B? Okay. So it looked like we had five hands, I think, for candidate A and 1 for candidate B. So it looks like candidate A, we would put forward the motion to have the Board of Trustees move to request that the Board of Trustees approve the candidate A, Donna Edge-Bean, as a member at large for our SEAC. Okay, can we get somebody to make that motion? Andrea, seconder?
That was Tara, sorry.
Sorry, Tara, sorry. Sorry, seconder? Sensa Renab, all in favor? Okay, excellent, thank you so much. And we would also then would like to, or need to put forward a motion to have the Board of Trustees offer the Durham Early Years Consortium a non-voting seat on SEAC. Donna, first, any seconders? All in favor? Okay. All right, so the question then would be, do we ask the trustee to put forward a specific name? We had 2 that put their names forward, or just reach out to the consortium to ask them to put forward a candidate.
We can ask them, because they're a non-voting member, they can put a candidate forward. Okay. We're just saying that they're non-voting for that particular association. That's not a problem. Okay. And then if we could get those forwarded for the board to ensure that it does get in November. Otherwise, we won't have anything happen till January, et cetera, and we don't want it waiting that late, right? So we'll move that ahead.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you. In advance of SEAC, just in case, Lisa has prepared those motion sheets, and we'll be connecting with Kathy tomorrow to make sure they're in the package for you. We thought it was easier to have them, and if we didn't need them, then to be in a rush to prepare.
Excellent. Fantastic. Go ahead. Senator Knapp, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, for this non-voting position, are we asking for a member and an alternate as well?
Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you. Because it's usually committee, they usually similar to something that will come up this evening, like Hannah's representation of SEAC on PIC. Generally, what they would do is put one member at the table for a cycle of SEAC, and then what we would propose is they rotate through the partners so that there's fair opportunity for you to get to know each of the partner organizations, as each of the childcares have slightly different ways of supporting and programming focus. But that commitment is really through the consortium, so they would be coming as a representative of the consortium. Their staff contact is Stacy Lapine Fisher, so she would chair and let us know. But our recommendation would be that it rotates through the partners.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we will move on then to our open discussion period. We didn't have anything specifically slated, but a couple of things did come up. Hannah has indicated that with sort of everything that she's dealing with at the moment, that sitting as our PIC rep, a representative on the Parent Involvement Committee, is just too much at this time. So she's not going to be able to fill that role. And we are hoping that somebody else will be able to fill in. Andrea, can you remind me of when the PIC committee sits?
Thank you, through you. PIC meets 4 times a year.
4 times a year.
I believe they're currently meeting virtually as well. I think they did similar to us, plan for the first part of the year, and then we'll see where we are in terms of COVID.
Okay. Does anybody here on SEAC have the ability to sit on the Parent Involvement Committee as our representative? I think it's a great way for, again, it's, continue to keep our SEAC face out there and prominent in the schools and sort of helping build that education and awareness of our existence and what it is that we do. So if anybody can take that on, that would be great. Go ahead, Sensor Renee.
I was kind of waiting like cat and mouse. Who's going to put their hand up first? But I am willing. 4 times a year, I do have that availability.
You have that available? Fantastic. Excellent. That's good to hear. There's a couple of things so I'm going to take this period and kind of throw out some stuff at you guys to think about and to consider. I would really love it if we could set up sort of a SEAC engagement sort of plan for this year. Like what do we want to do to help build sort of that community engagement between SEAC and our, the families that we're representing in many ways. We've talked about this as being a goal of SEAC along the way. And when the board was having events, we were really starting to get involved in attending those and making our presence known and, having our banner there and stuff and talking to parents and families. But obviously, currently, that's not a possibility. So, hopefully, through the next month, between now and next month, maybe we can all sort of think of something that we could do to help sort of plan for some SEAC engagement with our families, so that we continue to build that awareness. Whether that be like each of us reach out to 3 SECs to sort of attend and have a conversation there. I know most SECs or as far as I know, all SECs are meeting virtually still as well. Just some ideas on what we can do. I know go ahead, Tara.
The one thing that we had talked about, was it last year, 2 years ago? Last year, 2 years ago? I don't even know now. COVID kind of got in the way of a whole bunch of plans. We had talked about doing a parent advocacy sort of seminar, right? And at some point we did have a subcommittee. I think Rowan was on it and a few folks. Is that something we should pick up again? I know we sort of missed the window for this round of IEPs, but I'm just wondering if we should be planning maybe, because we do have more sessions and meetings in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
Could we bring that back up?
We were well on our way to planning that, and then we had a work to rule situation.
Yep.
That shelved it, kind of put it here, and then we were about to pick that right back up, and COVID hit and totally blew our plans right out of the water. So it is definitely an event that I'd love to see happen. And maybe we can think about how we make that happen. Right now, we still have the sort of constraints on, gathering and things like that. But it's something that maybe we can, if everybody sort of thinks about, we can think about how we could move something like that forward, or do we plan for, planning something together for sort of the moment we get the word go, but definitely that's, I think, and I think having a representative on PIC is a huge step forward as well. So Andrea, I see your hand up.
Just a couple ideas. So I know one, when we ran parent engagement last year through a virtual format through the board, the participation numbers were really high because parents didn't need to access childcare and the logistics around planning. I do appreciate that a lot of parents and caregivers have screen fatigue as well, but there is the convenience of logging on from home. Carla and I are also talking to our team about a little bit of a winter series, particularly for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, such as around ODSP and things like that. So if there were topics, we could look at either embedding or extending within that series. We were thinking once a month and just having different key topics for families of students. We could certainly look to maybe expand that a little bit and maybe partner with SEAC. So there would be one, like an association partnership that makes sense for a lot of those different pieces, and take a look at building that in if SEAC wanted to do so.
That's definitely sounds like an interesting way to go, and a great way to put our name out there. The other possibility is doing something, whether it's sort of through the Facebook feeds and the Twitter feeds of the Inclusive Student Services, highlighting your association SEAC rep, highlighting a different association on SEAC each month to put out awareness of the fact that there is an association that sits that may be of benefit or interest to you and your student. So it's another thing to think of. But if we take the next, sort of between now and the next SEAC meeting, some time to think about it, and if there's anything, any information that maybe we would need from, Andrea or whatever, if you guys could reach out to me, and we'll try and get that, get any information that we might need on sort of, what we could do moving forward, and whether it's feasible, if it's feasible, that would be great. Because most effective we are, we're a lot more effective, I think, sitting at this table, the more our families reach out to us, the families that we represent, right? It just broadens our lens. Does anybody have anything they want to ask? Sorry, go ahead, Tammy.
Hi, thank you. And I'm sorry if I'm speaking out of turn, but I wanted to just put it out there. If we wanted to start attending SDCs, I'd happily volunteer my school as a starting point for anybody who wanted to jump in and join. I have a very small SDC, but certainly it would just start to get the positive news out there and messaging, and then I could share that with colleagues as well, so that they would perhaps reach out to start to invite.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, I think if you could shoot out, sort of your SEC dates, and maybe we can find somebody who could attend to talk about who we are and what we do. Go ahead, Tara.
That's a really good start. Would it be possible, or would it be a good idea if we had a SEAC presentation that we could, trundle along with us to the SEC? Just thinking that I could go talk about SEAC, but it's sort of my lens and my view versus here's the official, this is what we do. And then I put my personal spin on them. And this is what, the things that we do and and this is what I've experienced versus, to give everyone sort of like, this is what we do, et cetera. Is that something we could have and leverage if we were going to do stuff like that?
I'd have to do some digging, but I don't know if you recall, Craig had sort of put something together, and I know at one point I had taken it and sort of played with it and made it fit the schools that I was speaking at, like the schools that I was talking to. I'd have to do some digging to find it and sort of resend it around. And Andrea, and then Donna.
I can go after Donna.
Okay.
Considering I just did a presentation for Spec Ed 1, I've got a bunch of stuff, but it's a little dry right now. You could make it more parent friendly, but on what SEAC does, I can forward that on, and people could work from that as well, from what SEAC does, and then change it.
Andrea?
Thank you. The offer was similar. We had just revised the SEAC brochure to be full page. So if SEAC wanted to request of staff, we could do a reach out to our communications team to pull some of those key information pieces for the front end of a PowerPoint, because they would make sure of AODA compliance with the deck presentation as well. But at the will of SEAC, if you'd like to direct staff in that way.
Yeah, that's more what I was thinking of.
Happy to take that on.
That's more what I was thinking of, saying have sort of like a SEAC board approved PowerPoints to keep the salient points, make sure that we're keeping all of our AOD, all of our requirements in as well, versus me trying to put something together and completely missing the boat, so that I have something to speak to. Yeah.
So what we could do is, Eva, if you send me, if either one of us will find what Craig created, we'll take what Donna, and then we'll take the SEAC brochure and we'll put a draft together. And then SEAC at one of the upcoming meetings could look through it and then make a decision as a committee. Because I think it's really important as you're going out and speaking on behalf of the committee, that you can certainly, what we'll do is we'll include the association pieces as well, and would obviously have you lean into your association. But I think it's really important as a representative of SEAC, as you said, Tara, that the consistency of the common message at the front piece, and then into your individual experiences and associations would be really important. So we'll connect with our communications team once we have those pieces and put a base together. And then SEAC can give feedback on that, and we'll make tweaks at your suggestion so that you can have that at the ready.
Perfect. That would be great. Thank you.
We can also put a note out to administrators to inquire. I know you're a small but mighty group, but just to seek, probably through survey, to say if there is interest, could they reach out to their SCCs, and if there is invite through that survey to kind of populate and just see. But I think we'll start with our SEAC admin reps, if that's okay, at their schools. I'm probably sure that Anthony would want one through to Henry Street, and Shannon at Westney as well. And just taking a look at that. And then we still have Dave with us as well at Dr. S.J. Phillips. And that gives kind of a different span across municipalities. And then we can spread out from there.
Great. And the other thing I wanted to put on the table for us considering is putting together sort of in the new year. And I certainly wouldn't want to do this until our new members have joined the SEAC table, because we want to make sure that they would have equal opportunity for that participation. But, it would be nice for SEAC to have somewhat of a direction, where we look at sort of what are the things, what are the, sort of 2021, 2022 school year items we want to address, things, specific maybe target areas that we want to address. And what do we want to look at as far as our goals for accomplishing things sort of longer term, maybe in a 5-year, through a 5-year lens, maybe. So that we can, especially when it comes to sort of this open discussion period, having that kind of focus will help us kind of determine, what it is we need to have those discussions on each month, instead of kind of looking for something we're throwing together just before a meeting or, at a meeting. So that's something to think about. I'm thinking that would be a subcommittee type thing that we could sit down and do. But again, I wouldn't want to put together a subcommittee until we have any new members of SEAC at the table, so that they have the opportunity to be a part of that and a voice on that as well. So that's just something to think of. Does anybody have any sort of questions or comments on that? Go ahead, Sensa, and then Donna.
I just wanted to pull back to what Tara was saying about putting our personal spin. When I watch all the social media stuff now, it's all about being personable with your audience, right? Mm-hmm. And this is a big ask, and I don't know why I'm saying it, because I'm not the most camera friendly, but I would love it if we as members could make mini videos that says, one, what brought us to SEAC to be on this committee, and tie it into the what we do here at SEAC, so that they see a personal face that starts it and then speaks a little bit about who they're representing, and then the little spiel about SEAC, so that the personal thing grabs the attention, or else we're just going to get scrolled by, right? Mm-hmm. Just talking about our organizations and our committee.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea, quite frankly. I personally like it.
Oh man, I got to get my hair done again. Come on.
Do I get to pick the color, Tara?
Sure. I'll put it to a vote. You guys can pick the next hair color. There you go.
Awesome. Excellent.
Right. I'll throw it out in the email. You guys can vote for the next one.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry, Donna, you had your hand up too.
I was just going to say that's an excellent idea. And if we just, say, okay, have each organization answer these 3 questions: who you are, who you represent, and as Rainab said, basically what you do, and sort of, as far as, and keep it under, so many minutes sort of thing. And that would be excellent. Absolutely excellent idea. But the other comment, and I'll bring this up because I think even I did this a long time ago, 4 years ago, and that we know that June election coming in, and this is where we had orchestrated, and because I know that OPSPA will be putting out the documents as well as there's always these panels, discussions, or debates from various political candidates within an organization. We had hosted one specifically around education, and a real focus on special education, and we got and it required you to set up, whoever wanted to set up in the various the provincial ridings, because there's several ridings within Durham that fall within Durham region. But we had specific questions that we asked. And so I know that we're looking at doing something like that again, where we have some questions, some focuses, and just to keep it on the radar, because June, of course, is the next provincial election. And that's just to keep special education on the radar, because we know that, and education on the radar, especially the last few years going through the pandemic and some of the issues and so forth. I think it's sort of critical that we look as a committee to do that again, to get that focus out there during election around what the candidates stand for around education, and in particular special education. Just a thought, but it really worked well. We had a great participation. We got the majority of the candidates in Ajax to come out.
We got all of them.
Yeah.
We were the only ones to get all of them. Yeah. From my understanding.
I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is something definitely to consider moving towards the provincial election time for sure. So there's a lot to think of there. So how about we, bring that about for our open discussion period sort of next month, and we can kind of pull together our thoughts then on what we'd like to do, where we'd like to go for sort of continuing building the awareness piece of our committee. Okay, so business arising from the minutes was the subcommittee with respect to the members at large. So that's been taken care of. Association reports, we did circulate from Voice for deaf and hard of hearing children. the October newsletter. Just to highlight a couple of items in that for anybody who might be watching. The October events, and I'm not sure the date of the annual pumpkin picking event that they had, but there on their website there is a place to register for that. So I'm not sure if that's happened. It may already have. October 31st, though, they have a Teens Outreach Program, Halloween social on Sunday, October 31st. And again, you can register on their website. The HHNP chapter has their first coffee social on Friday, October 29th. And you email admin@voicefordeafkids.com if you wanted to be a part of that. And their annual general meeting is November 20th. Outside of that, I did not receive any association reports. So the other thing, moving on then to correspondence, which would be the Rainy River letter, which is a letter supporting the passing of, sort of they're voicing their support for Bill 172, which is a statute, Education Statute Law Amendment Act for Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder from them. I think we've had a couple of those letters. Does anybody have any questions or comments with respect to the correspondence we received? Okay. Then moving on then to community concerns. Do we have any community concerns? Tara, go ahead.
Thanks. Vaccines coming through. Canada's just purchased 2.some-odd million doses for Pfizer coming in. Has there been any grumblings on how one could be planning to administer said doses? Is there potential for this to be done in the schools, or are we don't know?
Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you. We don't know at this time. We take our direction from the Durham Region Health Department.
Okay.
So the schools did run vaccine clinics, and I know a number of boards are advocating to have the COVID vaccine added to the list of mandatory vaccines, which is generally what is required for them to be moved into school administration on site. But we do take our direction from the province Ministry of Health as well as our local health partner. No information at this time.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other community concerns? No? All right, celebrations and successes. Go ahead, Darlene.
Sorry, I just wanted to share because Rowan isn't here, and it's not an association report because I'm not representing Learning Disabilities Association, but it is October is Learning Disabilities, LD Awareness Month. So there is LDAO.ca is the Learning Disabilities Association of Ontario. So that's the kind of provincial body to which our Durham association, I guess, is affiliated with. So there is a lot of, there's a press kit on LD Awareness Month, and there's a hashtag. So it's hashtag LD Month if you're interested in searching that up. But there are some alarming stats. 1 in 10 people in Ontario are impacted by LD. So it's far more common than you might think. And something that's very pertinent for our folks, this is from the stats from the website, is 35% of students with LDs drop out of school. 62% of students with LDs will be unemployed a year after graduation. 36% of youth in correctional facilities have specific learning disabilities, and almost 50% of adolescent suicides are folks who had a diagnosis of LD. So the whole goal of the campaign is to try to change some of these outcomes for people who are affected with learning disabilities. So there's lots of good advocacy work. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to light, Darlene. Appreciate that. Donna, go ahead.
What is interesting, because we always celebrate it, right, Tara, is March 21st, it's because it's World Down Syndrome Day, but October is also nationally known as Down Syndrome Month, as Awareness Month as well. But it seems like we always focus on the International World Down Syndrome Day on March 21st. So it's actually, I used to do this thing with my athletes all through last season. I did where every day I found out what special day it was. And I would tell them, even if it was like pizza day or pasta day, and I used to share at the end of the season, they got tired of it, but just thought I'd bring that up as well.
I'm good with knowing when it's pizza day or donut day or ice cream day, for sure. Thank you. Does anybody else have any celebrations or successes? No. Okay. Our next SEAC meeting is November 8th, 2021, right here online. And with that, we would look for a motion to adjourn. Donna, second. Censor and Eb, all in favor? Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.